Hey gang, Logan Albright here, back with another book review. And this is actually less of a book review and more of a little tips that I'm going to give you on how to write better. Because as I mentioned on this channel before, I'm a writer myself. I have some novels for sale. I'm going to put a link in the description if you're interested. But I want to talk about how to write more believable characters. And as an example, I'm going to use this book I just finished reading, Eiffelheim by Michael Flynn. Okay, so this book I just read for a part of a book club that I'm in. It's a science fiction novel. It's basically the story is about a 14th century German town that is visited by some aliens or interdimensional travelers who basically look like giant grasshoppers, and how the local population copes with that. That's a fine story as far as it goes. But I actually didn't enjoy the book very much at all because I thought the writing of the characters in particular was so poor. It cuts back and forth between modern-day physicists and archaeologists and historians who are trying to piece together what happened as well, which will be important later on. You'll see. Wait for it. There's suspense. Okay, so my first tip on how to write believable characters is to actually think about who your characters are as people, what setting they're in, what their environment is like, what their upbringing would have been like, and how they think. And then, when you're writing them, make their actions consistent with the characteristics that you've given them and that they would have in the real world. One of the big problems I have with this book is it's in 14th century Germany, right? And aliens who look like giant grasshoppers land, and the people think that they're demons. Fine. But how would you expect people who think the demons have landed in 14th century Germany would react? They would either run like crazy or they would immediately try to murder the aliens. In this book, they don't do either of those things. They kind of begrudgingly, but not that begrudgingly, befriend and help and try to understand the aliens' plight and see that they're just people too, like us. And we have to understand where they're coming from and learn to help them get back to their home planet. Okay, there's no way that would have ever happened in real life. I'm willing to suspend my disbelief about the aliens part. That's fine, no problems there. But a 14th century German monastery, they're going to just accept demons into their midst without doing anything about it? No way. Totally unbelievable, and that took me right out of the story right from the beginning. So if you're going to write these kind of stories, you have to figure out how your characters would believably act and have them act in that way. You're not a dictator as a writer. You don't get to just decide what all the characters do independent of what they would do in real life. You know, you may think as you're writing, it's my character, I can make him do whatever I want. But if it's not believable, it's going to take your reader right out of the book. And that's what happened to me in this book. And the second point, is, which is a little bit related to the first point, is don't marry Sue. Marry Sue is a term used in writing circles to describe a character who is essentially perfect, no flaws, can accomplish anything with minimal effort, gets lots of unearned success, and everyone else thinks they're so great all the time. It's a bad writing because, you know, no one can relate to that kind of character. Those kind of people don't exist in real life. And it's boring because, you know, if you have a character with no flaws who doesn't earn anything, you're not invested in their success and you don't care. The main character in Eiffelheim is a monk named Dietrich who has been educated in Paris, and he is oh so enlightened. He is immediately able to understand where the aliens are coming from and see their side of the story. He is able to understand their computers that translate for them instantly without any problem because he saw a clock in Paris. You know, just he's a completely unrealistic, unbelievable grasp of new technology, new ways of thinking. He's endlessly tolerant, endlessly forgiving. He has no real character flaws, no real personality, just smarter than everybody else around him, smarter than anybody in the 14th century possibly could have been, and much more socially tolerant and progressive than anyone in that century would have been. He's a Mary Sue character, right? He's got nothing, no flaws and no drawbacks, and he doesn't really earn any of his success. He's just smarter than everybody else and gets it done. That's bad writing. That's bad character development. You want your characters to go on a journey. You want them to go from flawed and miserable and unhappy and, you know, not very good at things to overcoming their shortcomings and confronting their weaknesses or their biases or their prejudices and come out the other side a better place. Or maybe not. Maybe they try to do those things and fail and they die. Or maybe they get worse along the way and become more degraded. But something has to happen. You know, they have to go somewhere. If they're just perfect all the time, it's like a superhero movie. That's why I don't watch superhero movies. They're boring. The characters don't go anywhere. Don't like it. And my third tip, which is related to dialogue writing, is don't have your characters tell each other things they already know. Michael Flynn does this a lot in this book with the physicist characters and also the Germans as well. It drives me crazy. They will tell each other things that the other character would obviously already know in their position in order to have exposition for the audience who doesn't know those things. So, for example, two physicists will start talking to each other, and one will say, well, as you know, Einstein's basic theory of relativity says this. And of course, anyone in physics is going to know what Einstein's basic theory of relativity says. You don't need to tell them. Maybe you have to tell the audience, but that's a bad way to tell the audience by telling the other character, because it's not believable that that dialogue would actually come out of someone's mouth in the real world. They would know that already. If you need to have exposition, don't do it in dialogue like that. You either need to have a character who wouldn't know those things to explain it to be a surrogate for the audience, or you need to have a way of doing exposition not in direct dialogue, maybe as an aside from the author to the reader or something like that. Another example is when they're in the 14th century Germany setting. The monks will say things, Bible quotes to each other and things. They'll make points about the Bible to each other that these people would already know. They'd know backwards and forwards. It would be insulting to tell them these things because it's so obvious and so basic, things they would already know. If you're going to tell the audience things like that, don't do it in that way, because it's just really insulting to their intelligence. The characters would not talk that way. And related to that point, another thing I should say, not really a point about character, but just a point about writing in general, don't show off as an author to your audience. One of the things Michael Flynn does in Eifelheim is he throws in a lot of gratuitous foreign language quotes for no reason at all. He says a character who's just arrogant and speaks in a lot of snippets of foreign language. You have to know all the foreign languages to read it. I did okay. I can, I've studied a lot of different languages. I can get through it, but most people haven't. And, that doesn't add anything to the story. All it does is frustrate the readers, and it doesn't make people think you're smart or clever. People don't say, oh, this author is so smart. He knows a lot of foreign languages. It's just frustrating to the audience, and you're just trying to gratify your own ego by showing off how smart you are, throwing in facts, throwing in foreign languages, throwing in scientific equations or physics or things like that. If it doesn't serve the story, don't do it, because all you're doing is self-aggrandizing. You're not actually teaching your audience anything or telling them a story that they're interested in hearing. So those are my 3 tips on how to write more believable characters. I hope that you found those helpful. If any of you are aspiring writers out there, I would advise staying clear of Eifelheim because it's not very well written. I'm sorry, Michael Flynn. I hate to be harsh, but you could have done better. Your story idea wasn't bad, but you didn't develop it very well. So there you go. I've been Logan Albright. Thanks for watching. I'll be back next week with another either book review or writing tips or something. I promise I'll have something for you. I just don't know what it's going to be yet. Take it easy. I'll catch you next time.